Hi, and welcome to the Active Code podcast, brought to you by Aspire Active Partnerships. I'm Paul Griffiths, and joining me each week on the pod is Luke Johnson.
Aspire Active Partnerships is a community of like-minded business leaders who all believe that collaboration in the sports coaching and children's activity sector is essential for success. We've proven that working in collaboration does benefit business growth and essentially helps more children be more active more often.
To combat physical inactivity, we need organisations that are performing at their very best. Organisations will only operate to high standards if they are led well. So, if we can focus on developing high quality leaders throughout an organisation, not just at the top, customers will experience higher quality services, which means heightened enjoyment levels and increased levels of physical activity. And if we do this at an early age, we know that we can build the foundations for a more active, happier and healthier life. The Active Code investigates what it really takes to be a successful leader and how organisations can combat physical inactivity.
We won't be alone through this journey. We are joined by business owners and experts from our sector, as well as inspirational people from outside our industry. We'll understand the importance of physical activity to our guests, reflect on leadership experiences, and gain thought-provoking insights on how we can crack the Active Code and get more children more active more often. If you like what you hear, please leave us a rating and subscribe wherever you get your pods.
Hi there, thanks for joining us for episode 11 of the Active Code. I'm delighted to welcome today's guest, Jeremy Snape. Jeremy had a successful 19-year career as a professional and international cricketer. After studying an MSc in sports psychology, Jeremy has supported some of the biggest names in sport, including South Africa cricket, England rugby, Premier League football and F1. His trusted access gave Jeremy the chance to interview the world's top thinkers and performers from elite sport, the military, business, the performing arts and academia, which is where Sporting Edge was born, a unique digital library which accelerates mindset and behaviour change across numerous corporate clients. The Members Club inspires people to build high-performance thinking habits needed to build successful careers, teams and cultures. With uncertainty and disruption affecting every industry sector at present, leadership has never been so important. And myself and Luke are really looking forward to hearing from Jeremy in today's podcast. A very warm welcome to the Active Code, Jeremy.
Hi guys, thanks for inviting me.
Thank you for your time. A 19-year career in professional sport is an incredible achievement, Jeremy. Can we start at the very beginning and learn a bit more about that professional journey and the transition from professional cricket to the work with leaders and teams that you do currently?
Yeah, well, it's winding the clock back a few years, but I guess I started professionally. I came through the age groups in Staffordshire. That's where I grew up. So played the under 11s and under 13s age groups, and then eventually captained England at under 15, signed pro at 16. But my parents were always really keen for me to carry on my, education and schooling and stuff. So I started as a pro at 16 at Northants part-time, and then did my schooling as well at Denstone College, where I played a lot of sport over in Staffordshire, a boarding school there. So incredibly fortunate, to get that grounding and that balance between the sport and the academic side. And that gave me a bit more perspective, I guess, at the back end of my career when all that finished. So I was really thankful for that. But yeah, the chance to play professional sport for 19 years is an absolute privilege, and really lucky and grateful for those opportunities, traveling the world, meeting loads of mates, making friendships for life, winning some trophies, getting injured along the way, and plenty of tears and heartbreak, but fantastic experience for sure.
And with regards to, so you started playing cricket at the age of 11, were you always very active as a child?
I think so, yeah. I was probably hyperactive, if anything. I was dashing around the place and always playing football or, running around the place. I grew up with a load of kids older than me. My brother's 3 years older, so a load of his peers would play sport in the sort of street outside the house, and they'd whack the ball down the road and then they'd say, "Oh, go on, Jeremy, we'll time you to go and fetch it." And my sort of youthful naivety and exuberance, I'd sort of sprint off as fast as I could to go and fetch this ball for them. And then I'd wait to hear the time that they'd sort of got on their stopwatch. And of course, they were just making it up, and they were thankful that I got the ball for them. So slightly gullible, very hyperactive, and keen nonetheless.
Good tactics, though. I like that. It's a good tactic.
It was very, very good looking back. I mean, I've used it with my own kids since, but I think, I played a lot of football when I was young, up to that sort of 12, 13 age group. When I went to Denstone College, I played rugby there for the first time. Played in the first team there. I really loved rugby, actually. Very physical and, great team working. So great to have that winter sport element, because my summers were busy with cricket. But when I went on to university at Durham, the rugby lads were significantly bigger than me, and I just focused on the cricket. And by then I was playing professional cricket, so that took a whole new sort of focus level, really.
And what does physical activity mean to you at the moment, Jeremy?
Well, it's a very good question. I think as a professional athlete, I was very fit. We had lots of... I retired, just for a bit of context for your listeners. I retired in 2008, so I was on that cusp between probably when I started my career, the bath and the dressing rooms were for champagne, to be put on ice in the baths. You could get about 6 or 10 bottles in there if you'd won a trophy. When I retired from playing professional cricket, the bath was full of ice still, but we were actually sitting in it for 90-second bursts. So it was a slightly different era. But yeah, I mean, I absolutely loved that sort of fitness element of it, the bleep tests and the fitness side really driving it. And that was a massive part of the success in the teams that we had. The Gloucestershire team that I played in that won loads of trophies between 2000 and 2003, I think we won 6 trophies in that period. It was really on the basis of being athletes that played cricket rather than being cricketers. I'd played at a previous club at Northants with Alan Lamb, the exuberant captain. And, we'd do a slow jog around the park and then go into the pub for lunch and sort of talk about the weekend kind of thing over a pie and a pint. So that wasn't exactly the same fitness level. But Gloucestershire focused on fitness, and that was part of our identity as a team. And we ended up being incredibly successful. I think when you retire from being a professional athlete, when everybody is delivering training plans, hydration plans, nutrition plans for you, you can go one of two ways. You can either sort of rebel against it and say, right, I'm not having anything to do with that, and people sort of balloon out and get middle-age spread in their mid-30s, or you can try and stick to it. And I suppose I was fortunate in a way that my transition from playing professional cricket was being a coach and psychology support in some of those elite teams that you mentioned: South African cricket, Sri Lankan cricket, Premier League soccer, IPL for 6 years. So I was always travelling with those international sporting teams, and you'd soon get a dig in the ribs if you're getting a bit squidgy, and you'd be running around the pitches and eating healthy like the players. So I suppose that was a good transition from an activity and health point of view. I probably found it harder through Sporting Edge being an entrepreneurial pursuit, which didn't have quite so much activity involved. So, I try and keep fit now. And, back to your question of what does it mean to me, I think it's meant different things through my life, but now it means psychological and emotional health. It means weight control and sort of, feeling and looking good, I suppose. It's social aspects of activity, going out with friends and going on bike rides or doing activity together. And also it's part of my profession. I'm explaining to people that we need a healthy body to have a healthy mind, and vice versa. So I suppose activity is all parts of that. But I think I've probably moved from that performance end of my drive that I had in my earlier life, and it's much more recreational and it's physical activity rather than competition. And I don't time myself when I go on runs and things. I termed this phrase on one of my LinkedIn posts about going for a jauke. Everyone was sort of after New Year, I think, hitting the wall and trying to get back into their activity. And I think I live out in the countryside in Leicestershire, and the chance to go for a jog and walk a bit and jog a bit, that's quite nice. So a jog is probably my favoured pastime, and sometimes that's 3-4 miles, sometimes it goes a bit further, up to 8, 10, 12 miles or whatever, but I'll run a bit, walk a bit, and if there's lambs in the field or something, stop and have a look, and that to me is what activity is. It's trying to be active and healthy, but also take in what's around you. I'm not glued to a stopwatch or desperate to beat my personal best around the local block. It's about being healthy in mind and body.
And is it quite sporadic at the moment? Is it a case of like, I look out the window, I'll go for a walk, or is it structured into your days around your work at the moment?
Well, it's a good question. I bought a rowing machine in the middle of lockdown because it was pitch black, freezing cold, and I wasn't, getting the kids ready for school and stuff was a bit hard. So I just did a few 500-meter blasts on the rowing machine, which absolutely batters me. But that's probably a good thing that I can do, 15, 20 minutes. I'm sort of in the house. It's not too far to go. And then, so I'll do that on weekdays. And then at the weekend, a longer run or a bike ride is, hour and a half, sort of bit of switch off time on the Saturday and Sunday.
And on the days that you're not doing physical activity, or if you didn't do it on a weekday, Jeremy, do you notice the differences?
I think so, yeah. I mean, it's one of those things that you never regret going for a run, do you? You never regret exercise. It's just, I think you've sometimes got to either make the time proactively, or you've got to sort of remind yourself of how positive you feel, once you've been. So I often think, even yesterday, I mean, it was lashing down with rain and hail here. I don't know what it's like for you guys, but I almost see that as double points if I go for a run when it's like that. Even if it's just a couple of miles up and down the road, it's to get out and actually do something rather than let the duvet beat you, I think is probably the best way. I mean, I don't always perfect it, but certainly try and be, as active as I can.
And obviously, you mentioned that you're a dad as well. So, in terms of like shaping the behaviour of your children from an activity perspective, is that something that do they need encouraging, or are they at that age where they just get on with it and as active and as hyper as possible?
Well, it's a very good question. I think my two girls are 16 and 13. They were very active and involved in loads of different sports. They've both picked one sport that they've sort of taken as their chosen path, which is great. So one's into diving and one's into taekwondo. The younger girl, she's very active at school, and the eldest will do as little as possible, I think, at this phase. But, they've both been healthy, they've both been active, and I think they see, myself and my wife being active through choice and not through being forced. They think it's a little bit strange that we go for a run. But I think it's part of shaping those healthy lifestyle choices, isn't it? The nutrition, and activity as well. It's all part of the same package. But interestingly, for somebody who was very serious about sport and activity for so long, I'm very relaxed with the kids. I don't push them into things. I think it's nice to be healthy, but I've never forced them to do sport or to, stay committed to things or be champions at anything. It's about them finding their own path, really, and finding that balance for themselves.
Yeah, and fun is such an important part, isn't it, of childhood, to really kind of set the trends of activity into later life. It's often what we hear from other people on the pod as well, with regards to setting the behaviour and the activities that go on in childhood. It really does set you up for life. So if children and young people are put off at an early age, it's going to be really hard to make sure they're active as an adult. So that's where role models obviously come in, and as parents, it's so important. We often miss it, don't we, Luke? I think too often it comes back to schools, but parents have a big part to play with regards to role models. Whilst we're on role models, just shifting across into the kind of whole leadership side of things, who has been the most inspirational leader that you've worked with, either on or off the pitch?
Well, it's a very good question. I've been so lucky to meet and interview, about 100 top leaders in different fields. But I guess working with Shane Warne in the Indian Premier League, the first year of that. We won that as an underdog team, the Rajasthan Royals. I'd not really worked with Warne before. I knew he was incredibly charismatic, and I knew that he was a massive A-lister, and obviously he's an iconic cricketer. But I just think the way he brought that group of youngsters together and gave them belief, in their own performance was incredible, really. So that would probably be the best leadership story. It was almost like a startup. The team had never existed before. There was an auction situation where all the best players in the world got put into an auction and bid for. Warne was our iconic captain and coach, and he led that, brought that team together and lifted the trophy. So that was amazing. But then, I've been very lucky to interview military leaders, academic thought leaders on different sides of leadership, and people like Baroness Campbell, who I know has been active in the Youth Sport Trust and the chair of UK Sport, now working with the FA in the women's game. Some incredible leaders that all have their own style and that ability to set the vision and set the big picture and almost talk about what it's going to look like from the top of the mountain or that higher ground. So you really get a 3D and sort of multi-sensory feel for what it's going to be like to be successful. But they also help to break down that process of climbing the mountain and the drudgery and the monotony and the setbacks and the slides and the landfalls and the storms that you've got to get through. They help you through each of those. So I guess it's that ability to set the direction and then be very practical in helping people get through what needs to be done to improve. Those are some of the, the elements that I've seen.
So our listeners lead remote workforces predominantly. What communication traits do you think those people you've mentioned already have that make them so successful as leaders?
Yeah, good question. I think there's always that strategic intent. So we've got a great insight from one of the Formula One leaders who talks about how much change goes on within Formula One. 90% of the car gets changed year on year. So there's constant innovation. You've got the commercial team, you've got the legal team, you've got the HR team, you've got the aerodynamics team, you've got the pit crew, you've got the racing team. All of these different elements are all focused on one singular goal, and that's to reduce lap time. That's to make the car go faster. And that's something that they use as that sort of central goal of alignment that helps everybody to focus. So if I'm involved in the commercial or the marketing team, I know that if I get a brand new sponsor in that's going to, inject some cash, that means we've got the money to invest in new technology. If I'm in, the pit crew, then it means that I can get the car, in the best shape possible, on every lap of the track that's going to do its bit very directly. If I'm in the logistics or the operations, I know I've got to fly this spare part out to the Middle East or Monaco or wherever it is to get ahead of the car for any, pit stops and improvements it needs in the race season. So everyone knows that their job is to improve lap time. And I think that's quite a nice focus. So I think when we do work remotely, reinforcing that central purpose and mission of the team is really important. What are we here to do for our schools, for our customer, for our network? And then I think they've got the ability to make each activity very focused as well. So we're not just having a meeting. This meeting is about updating you with this level of information, or this meeting is to have as many perspectives as we can to try and answer this particular puzzle that we've got. And those two different Zoom calls or Microsoft Teams calls will have a very different tempo to them based on the formula that's, what that meeting is for. So I think it's, probably over communicating during times of change or when people are working remotely. There's a lot of organic conversations that would happen around the car park or the coffee machine or in the kitchen if you were working in a face-to-face kind of environment. But you've got to be much more overt in your communication because you're not picking it up by hearing the gossip or hearing it through osmosis while other people are on the phone. So you've got to direct the communication to people and groups much more clearly, I guess.
Yeah, I love the F1 example there. It's a really, really nice example. And going back to what you talked about, I think you said when you were at Gloucester, when you talked about you didn't have maybe the best squad of cricketers, but you worked on your fitness and you worked on the smaller things that maybe other counties didn't have. I suppose that's kind of going into that theory of, I think it's maybe Sir Clive Woodward initially with the kind of 1% stuff, the marginal gains. Is that also is there a similarity there from the experience at Gloucester and the example you've just given there with the F1 team?
Well, I think so. I work with a lot of companies now, and we tend to think that innovation is some, boffin, a bit like those old T-file adverts where you've got a guy in a white coat with a head that's, got like a six head, the forehead extended. And, they've got massive brains and they come up with, ingenious solutions all the time. And it's rarely like that. It's rarely a eureka moment. It's often, as you say, just looking at each part of a customer journey or each part of a customer experience or each part of a production line and saying, how can we improve these elements by 1 or 2% along that chain? And actually doing that as a sort of systematic review process. Because actually, when we improve each of those component parts, there's that multiplier effect when we aggregate it all together. So I think that's more like it. And I think, again, the great leaders and coaches don't just talk from the top down about, carry out my instructions and do them properly so we don't make mistakes. They understand and appreciate that some people in the factory are closer to the sort of production line, or some people who are interacting with school teachers will be more aware of the frustrations that they have in getting kids into an activity club, for example. So, in a way, the leadership is decentralized to be wherever the greatest level of insight is. It doesn't have to be the CEO or the boss. It's where the sort of interaction with the customer or the consumer is coming from. Because if we can get creativity coming to solve those problems locally and feed them back up, as well as some top-down direction, then that's a really innovative culture.
Yeah, I mean, we spoke in the previous episodes around the importance of surrounding yourself with experts, and I think there's a lot of small business owners who tend to be a little bit, they find it difficult to let go of stuff. So again, surrounding yourself with experts. We talked about the F1 team. You can't employ 10 people to focus on 10 different things and then hope someone else will pick up number 11, 12, 13 and 14 because it's just there and needs doing. So really making sure that we are surrounding ourselves with experts. We can let go of stuff. It's okay to make mistakes as long as we can correct it and improve the process. And I'm guessing that's something, no matter what the size of the organisation that you've worked with, is that something that you tend to see happening more now?
Yeah, it's really interesting because I think it's almost more important for entrepreneurs or people with their own business to bring in outside insight, because when we've built a business or an approach, we think that's the right way. And if all we do is listen to, or read our own brochure, then we're just going to reinforce the fact that we think that's perfect. When you're in a big organization, you're much more likely to come across conflicting views and tensions or whatever else that are going to challenge your thinking. So I think that's part of the reason we built our members club at Sporting Edge, because if you imagine, we've filmed some of the most impressive people around the world, all with their view on goal setting or feedback or strategy or handling pressure or whatever it is. Ultimately, you're surrounding yourself with the best advisory board in the world, because you've got anyone from Sir Dave Brailsford, Eddie Jones, a Harvard professor and a military leader, all telling you what they think about how to engage a team or how to set a vision. Well, you don't necessarily, if you're sitting on your own and you've just set up a business, you're never going to have access to those people, and you're probably not going to spend £10,000 going off and doing a business degree or whatever while you're trying to run your own business. So I think that, obviously come and join Sporting Edge, because that's what we do. And we're thrilled to support people with their thinking. But, in the shortest example you can have is read different publications, read different magazines, follow different people on Twitter. And actually what you should be looking for is people who stretch your thinking or actually contradict your thinking. because when you go with people that think differently, it actually makes you rethink what you've already built. Now, if you choose to stay with it because you've got good reason to, that's fine. But if all you do is create an echo chamber of 2 or 3 people who are desperate for the salary that you're paying them, and ask them, well, what do you think of my grand master plan? They're going to say, yes, boss, you've got a brilliant master plan. So one of the challenges of being a boss or getting higher up in the pyramid of leadership is that you get far less challenge the higher up you go. And you've actually got to proactively bring in challenge into your own thinking to make you feel and think objectively and make sure that you've got the right thing for the customer or the right thing for the team, rather than, just do more of what you did 6 months ago because it's what your best idea was back then. I think.
As a business owner yourself now, Jeremy, what do you do to make sure that you're challenged?
Well, as I say, I'm very lucky that I'm spending, a lot of my time interviewing these people, researching them. I've got a library of 700 or 800 2-minute videos telling me what to do. And whenever I get interviewed, I'm often sharing insights from a military leader or the Formula One example that we just spoke about, so they've become part of my view of high performance. I listen to podcasts, I read books and, watch documentaries and things. And I guess we're all looking for slightly different elements. For me at the moment are, consulting side of the business through the pandemic, me speaking at conferences and doing that sort of event type work has scaled right back. There's a lot of webinars that we're doing where we feature our content and our insights. But the main growth area for me and the main area of focus is with our digital platform. So I'm pushing myself and testing myself to learn about, software businesses and digital platforms and product specialists. So that's an area that I'm stretching myself in. And, as 20-year cricketer, that's very different for me. But that's where my business is heading. And I've got to walk the talk as well and stretch my thinking with, as I say, software licensing businesses or media businesses or whatever it might be with those latest trends.
Rewind the clock a bit there, Jeremy, as well. As a professional cricketer, are you given support as you go through that career journey as a professional cricketer? Are you kind of given support to know what life will be like when it's finished, or what you need to do when that career is finished?
Well, I think it's much better now. I mean, the Professional Cricketers Association has probably been going about 30, 35 years, something like that. And it's got stronger year on year, and it supports the welfare, the professional development of all the players, past and present. So there's definitely lots of support. There are these transition days where you get former players coming back and sharing their story. But I think, like lots of young people, we all believe that our sporting career would never end. And that, I know everyone else is retired, but I never will. I'll always be valuable to the club and they'll always give me a contract. But of course, I retired at 35 and I was very lucky to do it through choice, to take a job working with South African cricket. For the vast majority of players, they'll either be told they're not good enough or their cruciate ligament goes or whatever it might be. So that dictates your future. So I was asked a few years ago at one of the PCA events, when's the best time to prepare for your second career? And I said, well, usually about 2 years before you tear your hamstring or snap your Achilles, because you'll need to be ready for that time to start straight away. And this kid was like, oh, wow, and I think you've got to proactively plan it. And where I think there was a period where athletes were told that you've got to be, so focused on your career that you almost don't think about anything else. I would say it's almost the opposite, that having a secondary career or having a secondary line of training or having a secondary hobby actually helps you to spread the risk of your career, which allows you to play with more freedom. It's often the players that have nothing else that are so desperate to keep that job that become so intense that then can't relax and can't deliver the goods when they're under pressure. So I'd almost go the other way, that starting your own business while you're playing and you've got that upswing of your profile, everybody wants to know you while you're a professional athlete. I've seen it with even some of the biggest names in sport, that as soon as they retire, their share price drops right down. No one's really bothered about them at that point. So if you're launching a product, you'd want to launch it during your career rather than after it, which brings that timeline forward massively. So it's a really difficult tension, for somebody as an athlete who's got a short career to be thinking about building a second career. But what I would say is the second career should be something you're passionate about and something that you find fun. So actually it doesn't feel like a job. Me doing my master's degree in psychology and setting up Sporting Edge and interviewing all these amazing people. Okay, it is a job, but it's actually what I'm passionate about. So I'd do it if I wasn't being paid anyway. And I think if you can find something like that, whether it's a, coffee company or a, I don't know, hospitality business or whatever it is, if you can set that up alongside your professional sporting career, then better to do that earlier rather than later.
Moving into the kind of education sector, Jeremy, all of our partners in the network work in schools, and their aim is to get more children more active. And you mentioned leaders can sometimes lack challenge, and I think that can be the case for a lot of head teachers in primary schools. So how do you think school leaders can utilise sport and physical activity to support children's health and mental health?
Well, it's a really interesting one again, isn't it? Because I think, we're through the pandemic, it's given us a huge pause to reflect and rethink what we're doing. Now, our kids spending, 2 hours a week doing Latin, is that as valuable as 2 hours a week doing physical activity that they find fun? And I think this is part of the challenge, that most kids don't look forward to double maths and many kids don't look forward to double PE. So when it's wrapped up as something that they have to do that is, physically demanding, then I think that brings a barrier to it. So I think the more we can think of activity around the school, there's, fun activities that we can do to get people moving and stop people being so sedentary, then that's really critical. And for school leaders, the people who are pioneers, who almost, I'm not saying rebel against the curriculum, because I know there are guidelines in place, but it's, who's going to be the teacher that says, actually, we're not going to do it like that. We're going to do this for 1 hour a week or 2 hours a week. And it's just part of the school. And it's, if you come to this school, that's what we do. And we want to be active because we want your mind to be active. We want you to be, healthy and have your well-being, your broader well-being, at heart as well. I mean, it's interesting listening to some of the neuroscientists about, how your brain, the brain benefits of greater oxygen circulation from going for walks, for example. So I know our climate in the UK doesn't particularly support this, but you can imagine that, everyone lines up in the school playground and different groups go off and walk around the school playing fields in, different activities for 15 minutes first. And then we go into the first double maths or whatever it might be. And we might see high levels of engagement. It might help social relationships. It might help people with that transition from being at home, which might be pretty stressful, the trip to school and then into school. We've just got to rethink some of the models in the same way that many businesses are having to rethink the way they deliver products digitally through the pandemic. Maybe we need to deliver our education with more activity, and a refreshed set of ideas on it.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, cognitive function goes through the roof after just a 10, 15-minute walk. And if school leaders kind of understood that, and like you said, were brave enough to actually say, no, we're going to do it like this. And I mean, the results, I'm sure, would be really positive. What can we learn from top performing leaders, like the ones you've worked with, to help engage more children in activity things? So the people you've spoken with and interviewed, are there any key traits for our sector or leaders in our sector that we can then engage more pupils in physical activity? I'm
thinking of Shane Warne as a head teacher. Jeremy here would be quite a good one.
Well, I think, the interesting thing for, when the reality hits, it's a very, very different thing being an elite sports coach for a tournament compared to being a head teacher for 10 years. So I think what we've got to do is we've got to have a very clear vision about what we think successful schooling is. Now, to me, activity has to be part of that. It's just, we can't expect people to reach their potential unless they're exploring their physical potential through that journey. So I think that has to be part of the definition. And then I suppose if that's part of our definition, it's when is that going to show up in our curriculum and what's going to be a non-negotiable activity that everyone has to be. Now, it may be that we have a treasure hunt, or it may be that we have orienteering, or it may be that we have some kind of relay race around the school grounds in teams of different years or different houses or whatever, to be slightly competitive, that allows the more physically active to do the sprinting and the less physically active to walk, hold the compass and tell everybody where to go. Those kind of things allows people, to build teams that have got different activity levels or fitness levels or competence levels in them. And then I suppose for leaders as well, it's starting to think about, okay, who are my role models? Who are my active teachers who are role models? Are the teachers going for walks? Are the teachers doing walking lessons? Are the teachers taking lessons outside? Now, the pandemic, saw teachers under trees on the school field, taking a history lesson, for example. Well, great. Can we keep that sort of stuff going? And it's not just because there's fresh air, to stop COVID spreading. It's actually fresh air and fresh stimulation to keep ourselves healthy and active. So depending on the age group, I think we've got that. And again, it's looking to the social component. I think very often we see activity as, okay, you've got to do these, 20 squat thrusts, climb that ladder and then run around the school block 4 times and we're going to time you. And it all sounds like a sort of military drill situation that kids have got to go from double maths to now be compliant in this. And I think what I've seen with some of the elite environments is that autonomy, depending on which age you're at, obviously young kids have got to be pretty much directed and told what to do. But I think autonomy is a fascinating intrinsic motivator that can give people some choice over what they want to do. So, for example, I was working with an elite sports team that the fitness trainer was saying, this is going to be really tough. We had a heavy week last week. They're not going to like this session. They've got to do this amount of aerobic training in this heart rate. We've got to blast them this morning. That's what the manager wants. So I said, well, does it matter what equipment they use? And they said, not really. It's heart rate that we're measuring. And I said, okay, so we've got a stair climber. We've got some kind of pain mechanism. I don't even know what the machine is. We've got a rowing machine. We've got a bike. We've got a treadmill. We've got all these different, weapons, if you like. And it's like, okay, well, your heart rate's got to be at this level for 20 minutes. Pick your weapon, off you go. Which one do you want to be in? And just the fact that some guys like the rowing machine, some guys like this Versa climber, some guys like the bike, meant that they'd got some choice over it. And that made them commit to it more rather than being told to line up on the treadmill and everyone's got to do this same exercise. So I think if we can make it fun and give the kids some kind of choice over, you can either do this or you can do this, but it's been engineered in a way that tells us, well, you're going to do 5,000 steps anyway, whichever one you choose. So you either go on the treasure hunt or you follow the yellow snake around the car park and, you're on that 15-minute activity over there. I think giving them some choice over which one is another engagement tactic.
Yes, fun is crucial. It's a crucial word there, isn't it, with regards to engaging children in activity. And from my opinion, I think as well as a business leader, fun is also a crucial element in the work environment. Because if we're not making it a fun and enjoyable place to come, then we're not going to get as much from our team as we'd have liked. So when it comes to identifying future leaders in an organisation, let's say small businesses, business owner operated initially, we're looking to step away so we can work on our business more. What are the most important characteristics as a business owner we should be looking out for people within our organisation that can really step up and help us grow and develop?
Yeah, good. I suppose it's somebody who can take the initiative and is happy to be accountable. That's what we're looking for. Somebody that likes responsibility, and when you give them a project, they see it end to end, and they might not get it 100% right, and they definitely won't do it exactly how you would. But as long as they're following the same, commercial, legal, ethical, style and framework that you would use as a leader to make your decisions and to design the intervention yourself. Maybe you've got a brand guideline, or this is what our activity sessions always include, or, this is how we cost one of our proposals based on these 3 factors. If you're educating your team on how to use those different templates, then they should become, au fait with how to do that. And then eventually you can lengthen the distance between you and them and give them full autonomy on it. So I think it's starting to create systems and processes that can be followed by other people. The second stage is to ask them, if we had a client ask for this, how would you use this template to build the proposal or build the activity session? And then say, right, let me now listen to you speak to a client using that template that we've been through twice. And then the final thing is to say, we've got a new client, use your template, you've practiced it enough, you know what you're doing, off you go. And it's that gradual, delegation, but it's coached delegation. I think, the worst case scenario is somebody says, oh, I'm too busy, you do it. We let this other person do it. They've got no real guidance or guidelines. They try and do their best. They make a mistake and then they get shouted at for doing it wrong. And I think that's the problem when somebody's time poor. And if you've got several people in your team, you want them all to be coaching each other at peer level so that they take you out of it. And one of the Olympic coaches that I spoke to was talking about his leadership philosophy, and he wrote it down on a piece of paper, and it said C3B4ME. And I was like, I don't understand algebra. That's no good for me. You're going to have to explain it. And he said, well, basically, when my team have a challenge, I want them to see 3 people before they come and see me. So it was C3B4ME. And that philosophy of, asking the team, how would we solve this problem? How would we answer this client issue? How would we solve this challenge? And getting people proactively to solve that problem on a Teams call or a Zoom call is a great way of just checking out where people are at. And once you get to the point where people are getting, good answers most of the time, then they're ready to be set free and let them, go and deal in the detail, because that allows you to elevate into that strategic space that's thinking about the next lot of clients or the next season's, strategy or whatever it might be.
Jeremy, what has been your biggest leadership challenge to date?
Many. I suppose on the cricketing side, I found captaining the 2020 team for Leicestershire challenging but incredibly rewarding. We won 2 trophies at Leicester, and that was great. Very fast moving game. Microphone in your ear with Sky Sports asking you what's going on the pitch, and you're trying to talk to them and captain and bowl and work out the strategy. That was very demanding. And then I suppose the shift from our business to being largely consultant led to digital first, that's been another seismic shift. And again, it's been testing on a number of levels. Financially, test relationships, it tests your thinking, it tests your communication. We built our brand new members platform. So a brand new end-to-end platform. We built it during lockdown with about 10 people all working remotely, some in the States, some in the UK, different time zones. It was a fascinating experience. And I'm really proud of the team that they were able to deliver that, because it's a world-class library. The technology's working in the government and Sandhurst, and many different businesses, and to be able to do that working remotely was a great success, really.
And something you should be really proud of. That's a huge task in itself, to go from that world of dealing face to face and that corporate world where everyone's used to seeing people in a live audience and delivering keynotes and all of that, and to then be like, right, we're shutting down, there's a pandemic, we don't know how long it's going to go on for, and now you've got to create everything and take it into a digital world. Full credit to you on that, and the content. We've had a good look at it. It is fantastic. So anybody that wants to go and have a look, Jeremy, what's the website again?
So it's sportingedge.com/membership. So there's a range of different digital coaching programs. So we've got a 30-day program that's all about the winning mindset. So that's about developing confidence and resilience and your well-being. And then we've got a 12-week leadership program, which again, we sort of take people through the various elements of leadership. So there's 12 factors in the research that we've done about world-class leaders. So that's a 12-week program. And then the Members Club is more of a magazine type subscription, which means you get access to all of our insights from the military, from Harvard, from elite coaches like Eddie Jones and as I mentioned, Dave Brailsford, or Gareth Southgate, some top Olympians, exercise physiologists, neuroscientists. And then we package that up with weekly micro lessons from myself, and we have events. So we recently had an event with one of the top communication coaches at RADA. She coaches the actors and the politicians, and she spoke about how to present on Zoom or Microsoft Teams with impact, and how to set your camera up, and how to use your voice and make and handle nerves and all that kind of stuff. So brilliant to be able to pull in some of these expert coaches to support our members group, and lots of great things planned. So exciting. I
guess there's some of the benefits that the pandemic has brought. Really, I think it's made a lot more people accessible, and they're more open to sharing their ideas. So what's the future for Sporting Edge?
Well, I guess we're constantly in this partnership exchange between what our members and what our clients want to learn more about, whether it's resilience or whether it's leadership through uncertainty. And then once we find out that that's what people's main pressure point is, then we'll go and interview Premier League football managers or best-selling authors, and we get their video insights, split it into these 2-minute clips, provide a little toolkit around each of the videos. So then we've got more and more content to support the members with. So I've always thought that our mindset is the key to our success. I think when our mindset's clear and positive, then we make better choices about our lifestyle, our health, our businesses. And then that becomes a virtuous cycle. When we start seeing success come through, we feel better, we feel more confident, we take on bigger risk, we have more success. So I think, we've never really invested in our mindset because there hasn't really been a sort of service or a product for it, because it's all been hidden and a bit uncertain. But hopefully by getting all these world-class performers to talk about their mindset and their approach and their leadership philosophy, that makes it a bit more tangible and practical for people. So the future for me is interview more people and really get our impact out across more communities like your own. So I'd love people to follow the podcast as well. Inside the Mind of Champions, that's where we share a lot of our insights if people enjoy podcasts like this one. So Inside the Mind of Champions, it's been in the Apple top 10 for many weeks in the management section. And again, great content source for people interested in leadership and mindset.
Just in addition to the great content you've produced on the website and via the podcast, Jeremy, you mentioned earlier there's various Twitter accounts, publications and magazines people can also refer to for some quick wins. Are there any that stand out for you that you'd recommend others?
Well, I think there's a great book called Atomic Habits by James Clear. That's a book I recommend a lot. I mean, he basically splits down behavior change into a number of sort of almost the architecture of making better choices. Don't expect to be teetotal if you've got ice cold beers, right in your eye line, after a tough day at work. It's putting them in the garage and making sure they're out of the way. Just little things like that it can really help you to get that upward spiral. And then there's also a sports psychologist from the US called Michael Gervais, who's got a great podcast as well called Finding Mastery. And he has some great guests on, and he's really into this sort of mindfulness space as well, which I think I've not spent so much time there, but I find it really interesting about how people get into that flow state and take downtime and slow themselves down rather than just this high octane sort of busyness that we've all been going through. So yeah, those two would be good resources.
I think the latter is something I need to have a look at. I like the sound of a bit of flow state. Jeremy, thank you so much for your time. We've got one last question we ask at the end of every podcast. And that question is, how can we get more children more active more often?
Make it part of the expectation that this is what we do in our school. This is what we do in our club. Let's base it on activity rather than fitness. We all know that the challenge that we've got is a massive increase in readily available, high calorie food and a sedentary lifestyle. The growth of both of those is in the wrong direction, and we've got to correct that. So we've got to be educating people about healthy fuel. And, we've got to be teaching people about being active, so making things fun, making things competitive, giving them more, choice over. They're much more likely to join clubs with their friends. So if you're running a sports club, have a phone a friend, model where you're saying, bring your mates along to the next session. Let's get more and more people, because they will stick in your membership club. They will do your after school club activities if their friends are in them. So base it as much around the social aspects as the science aspects and the sporting aspects. I've got 2 daughters. They sometimes go across the road to play cricket because we've got a cricket field in the village, but they don't go to play cricket. They go and run around with their mates, and the mates are the thing that will stop them going or start them going. So I think often it's leading with the social side that's probably the key, and the social side needs to be fun.
Of course, brilliant. Thank you for that. And thank you again for joining us on the podcast today, Jeremy. Really appreciate it. It's been fascinating. I've absolutely loved it. It's been a really good insight, learning more about your pathway and the transition from a professional cricketing career into business ownership and some of the challenges that you faced. And it's really clear the whole strategic leadership side of things, and really being kind of laser focused on that goal. What is that end goal? What's that vision? What does it look like? And then getting the team to follow. I really appreciate it. Thank you very much for your time. And just, I know you've already mentioned it, but another chance to mention it. So sportingedge.com for more information on your offer to various business owners, and to follow you on socials, LinkedIn, Twitter, I guess, Jeremy, the main two.
Yeah, it's at The Sporting Edge on Twitter and LinkedIn. I post loads of content on there. And as we mentioned, the podcast Inside the Mind of Champions. So that's in Apple and Spotify, or on the sportingedge.com site. So no, it's great. Thanks for the invite, guys. You're doing a great job. And I think this healthy lifestyle community is one that we've all got to support, and make sure that we're helping people and role modeling, healthy choices for ourselves, and making sure we inspire the next generation to follow.
Thanks, Jeremy.
Brilliant. Thanks, Jeremy.
Join us next time for the Active Code podcast. Remember to subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss an episode. You can connect with us on Twitter at aspire_partners, and find out more about us and the network at www.aspireactivepartnerships.co.uk.